Toyota cars are amazing. Toyota cars are overrated. They run forever. They blow up just like anything else if you neglect them. You've heard all of it. Meanwhile, you're the one actually driving a Toyota in 2026 with repair costs higher than ever, wondering how much of the bulletproof Toyota myth is real and how much is just people getting lucky with old Camrys. Here's the hard truth. Toyotas can absolutely be 200,000 to 300,000 mile cars, but only if you don't abuse the very things that keep them alive. And the worst part is, the abuse almost never feels like abuse. It looks like being busy, forgetting once, or it's just a little thing, I'll deal with it later. I'm going to walk you through 5 things you should never do to your Toyota if you actually want it to last. Not in theory, in real life. And I'll tell you what to do instead so you don't quietly destroy the reliability you paid for. By the end, you're going to see at least one habit that needs to change. If you want car content that respects your intelligence, not clickbait or dealer scare tactics, hit subscribe. I'm GearHead Genius. Let's get into it. The first thing you should never do is stretch oil changes just because it's a Toyota. This is the classic one. Older Toyotas from the 90s and early 2000s built the mythology. Change the oil now and then, and they'll just keep going. Those engines were low specific output, port injected, and very forgiving. Most modern Toyotas from roughly 2015 onward are not that simple anymore. Under the hood, you've got dual variable valve timing on many engines, very fine oil passages feeding those systems, dual injection on some models, and on newer 2.4-liter turbo engines and some Lexus variants, turbochargers that live and die by oil quality. From an engineering perspective, all of that depends on clean, correct spec synthetic oil. When you push oil to 12,000 or 15,000 miles because it's 0W20 synthetic, it'll be fine, or you get quick lube specials that technically meet viscosity but not the exact Toyota spec, this is what really happens over time. Varnish and sludge begin to form in tiny oil passages. Variable valve timing actuators start to respond more slowly and can stick. Oil control rings can coke up and your engine starts using more oil. And on turbo models, the bearings and seals are being fed oil that's past its best. The car still runs. It still feels normal. There's no flashing red light screaming at you. But you've quietly taken an engine that could have done 250,000 miles and turned it into a 150,000-mile engine. In 2026, Toyota still publishes extended oil change intervals, often up to 10,000 miles under normal service with the correct synthetic oil. The problem is, hardly anyone drives under truly normal conditions. Short trips, stop-and-go traffic, hot summers, cold winters, occasional towing or loading, those are severe conditions. In that reality, a 5,000 to 7,000 mile oil interval is a smart compromise if you plan to keep the car long-term. And you don't just want synthetic, you want oil that meets Toyota's latest spec for your specific engine. Oil is cheaper than engines. Don't treat your maintenance schedule like a dare. The second thing you should never do is believe that lifetime transmission fluid means never change it. You'll see that phrase in manuals and dealer literature. No service required under normal conditions. That sounds great if you lease and turn the car in at 36,000 miles. It's not great if you plan to own the car to 200,000 miles. Toyota's conventional automatics and hybrid eCVT transaxles are very robust, but automatic transmission fluid and hybrid transaxle fluid still age. In a regular automatic, the fluid lubricates gears and bearings, carries away heat, and provides the precise friction behavior that lets clutches apply cleanly. Over time, heat cooks the fluid, and clutch material contaminates it. Even if the transmission keeps working, it's not working in ideal conditions. In hybrid eCVTs, you don't have the same shift clutches, but you still have gears and bearings spinning in that oil, and you may have electric motor components in the same housing. Fine metal particles accumulate, and the fluid's properties drift from new. Will a Toyota transmission usually survive to 100,000 miles without a fluid change? Yes.
Will it be happier and more likely to go 200,000 miles if you change the fluid at reasonable intervals? Also yes. A sensible plan is a drain and fill on non-hybrid automatics every 60 to 80,000 miles and at least one transaxle fluid change on a hybrid around 100,000 if you plan to keep it. You're not flushing the transmission every 30,000 miles like some aggressive shops push. You're just giving very durable hardware the clean fluid it deserves. A couple $100 in fluid services over the car's life is a lot less painful than a $4,000 rebuild when you're retired and on a budget. The third thing you should never do is ignore the cooling system, especially given how hot summers have gotten. Modern Toyotas run pretty hot by design. High combustion temperatures help with emissions and efficiency. The trade-off is thermal stress. Today's engines use aluminum blocks and heads, thin gaskets, plastic radiator tanks, electric fans, and on hybrids and some turbos, complex coolant routing for inverters and turbos. Coolant isn't just a color in the reservoir. It raises the boiling point, protects against corrosion, and lubricates water pump seals. Even long-life Toyota super long-life coolant degrades over time. The corrosion inhibitors get used up. In hot climates like Arizona, Texas, or parts of the Middle East and Australia, that process accelerates.
What I see in neglected cooling systems are radiators that are internally restricted, water pumps that start weeping early, heater cores partially clogged, and in worst cases, engines that have seen one or two serious overheats and are now flirting with head gasket issues. On a modern aluminum engine, a serious overheat is not something you want to gamble with. A reasonable approach in 2026 is to replace coolant about every 5 years or 100,000 miles, sooner if you're in extreme heat or tow frequently. Check hoses. If they're more than 10 years old or look swollen, cracked, or soft, replace them before they fail. And don't randomly mix universal green coolant with Toyota's pink or red without checking compatibility. If your car has had mystery coolant added, a proper flush and refill with the right stuff is cheap peace of mind. A Toyota badge does not make an engine immune to heat damage. The fourth thing you should never do is drive indefinitely with bad alignment, tired suspension, or mild brake issues just because it still drives fine. This is one of the biggest quiet money leaks I see. Toyotas are so good at still starting, stopping, and getting you to work that people overlook how worn they've become dynamically. I put 10-year-old Toyotas on lifts all the time and find struts completely blown, bushings cracked or loose, tie rods with play, and rotors that have clearly been running hot because a caliper has been dragging slightly. The owner says, "It's fine, it just kind of wanders a little." Meanwhile, they're buying tires every 25,000 miles instead of 50,000, and their stopping distance is noticeably worse than when the car was new. From a physics standpoint, a bad alignment scrubs your tires and increases rolling resistance. Worn shocks and struts let the body bounce, which reduces tire contact in real-world bumps and affects braking and control. Dragging brakes convert fuel into unnecessary heat. In 2026, when tires and parts are more expensive, ignoring these things adds up fast. If your steering wheel isn't centered when you're going straight, if the car pulls, if you see uneven tire wear, get an alignment. If the car nosedives hard under braking, feels floaty, or crashes over bumps, it's time to think about shocks and struts. If you smell hot brakes after normal driving, have them inspected. A little money spent keeping the chassis healthy doesn't just make the car feel better, it preserves the efficiency and safety you're relying on. The fifth thing you should never do is ignore oil consumption and small oil leaks, especially on aging Toyotas. This is the quiet engine killer that sneaks up on people. Many Toyota engines between, say, 80,000 and 250,000 miles start to develop either mild external leaks or internal oil use. We've seen specific engines like some older 2.4-liter and 2AZ FE variants have known oil consumption issues that Toyota even issued service bulletins for. Even on newer designs, as the miles pile on, valve cover gaskets can seep, timing covers can weep, and piston rings can wear.
What most owners do is notice the dipstick is low once in a while, top it off if they remember, and ignore any spots on the driveway. They might smell burnt oil occasionally after a drive. They tell themselves, "It's old, they all do that. It's a Toyota, it'll be fine." The problem is, if the engine repeatedly runs a quart or two low between checks, you are slowly accelerating wear on rod bearings, main bearings, cam journals, and timing chains. Modern engines with tight tolerances don't like being starved of oil film, even a little. At the same time, oil burned through the combustion chamber contaminates oxygen sensors and catalytic converters. By the time the check engine light comes on for inefficient catalyst or misfires, you may be looking at an engine and emission system that are both tired before their time. In 2026, the smart move is to build Check the Oil into your life, once a month at minimum, more often if the car has over 100,000 miles. If you're adding more than a quart every 2,000 to 3,000 miles, don't just accept it as normal. Have a shop diagnose whether it's external leaks, internal consumption, or both. Some fixes are relatively straightforward gasket jobs. Others may not be worth doing on a very old car, but at least then you know you must keep the level topped religiously if you want to delay catastrophe. Simply pretending it's fine and occasionally dumping in a quart when you remember is how a perfectly good Toyota suddenly spins a bearing. So, 5 things you should never do to your Toyota if you actually want the reliability you paid for. Don't stretch oil changes and use bargain oil. Don't treat transmission fluid as truly lifetime if you plan to own the car long term. Don't ignore your cooling system, especially in hotter, harsher climates. Don't drive for years with bad alignment, worn suspension, and half-fixed brakes. And don't shrug off oil consumption and leaks as just part of aging. Toyota built you a car that can last a very long time. Whether it does or not is mostly about what you do between now and 200,000 miles. If you've been driving long enough to know that "it's a Toyota, it'll be fine" is not a maintenance strategy, and you want more straight, fact-based breakdowns like this, subscribe. I'm GearHead Genius. Every car has a story, and my goal is to make sure your Toyota's story doesn't end early for easily preventable reasons.